It's been a little while since we've checked on Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor who's running for the Republican nomination to seek the presidency of the United States. A couple of news articles have come out over the weekend to give us an update about his fortunes. How are things going? Well, to borrow a line from an old jazz song, he got it bad, and that ain't good. Hang on, folks. I'll explain everything that's going on here in just one second. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk. Governor Ron DeSantis was facing an almost impossible task to begin with. That is, he was going head to head with former President Donald J. Trump for the Republican nomination to seek the presidency in 2024. That task would be bad enough, but news has been coming out over the weekend which is starting to really question the continued viability of his campaign. Now, many will say that it's too early for someone like me to make that kind of projection, but 6 months will go like that in a campaign. And trust me, before you know it, it'll be January and the caucus goers be moving around in Iowa. So let's take a look at the articles we found, talk about what they mean, and give a frank assessment of where things are at. We start, as indicated in the opening, with an article from Politico. Take a look at this. DeSantis campaign sheds staff amid cash crunch. Fewer than 10 staffers were let go on Thursday, according to a person familiar with the campaign. Article written by Alex Eisenstadt. Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign is shedding staff as it navigates a cash crunch and looks to refocus resources on Iowa. Fewer than 10 staffers were let go by the Florida governor's campaign Thursday, according to a person familiar with the internal deliberations and granted anonymity to describe them. Each of the aides was involved in event planning. Some of them may soon wind up at an allied outside group. Never Back Down, the pro DeSantis super PAC, has received resumes from staffers who've been let go, a person familiar with the group said. The decision to shed staff comes as the DeSantis campaign has struggled to meet its fundraising expectations. Though the governor has raised $20 million in the second quarter of this year, $3 million of that was earmarked for the general election. In addition, only about 15% of his donations came from small dollar donors, a level he will likely have to enhance in order to keep up with former President Donald Trump, who has built a robust small dollar network over the years. DeSantis' campaign has spent more than $1 million on payroll taxes, insurance, and processing fees in the second quarter with roughly 90 staffers on the books. Despite the fundraising difficulties, DeSantis remains firmly in second place in the GOP primary behind Trump, and Never Back Down has raised more than $100 million. DeSantis is expected to campaign heavily in Iowa, where he is preparing to embark on a tour of the state's 99 counties, an ambitious plan that would require extensive event staff. It is likely that Never Back Down would help stage at least some of these events. Last week, the organization sponsored a DeSantis appearance in New Hampshire. Okay, that's Politico. That's bad enough. But there's reports coming from other places which give further analysis and tell just how much trouble DeSantis is in. Here's a report from NBC News, came out yesterday. Headline: Ron DeSantis' campaign finances have some flashing warning signs. Most of DeSantis' money came from donors who have, quote, maxed out and can't give again, as small donations have been a struggle for Trump's GOP challengers. Article written by Jonathan Allen, Bridget Bowman, Ben Camisar, and Alexandra Marquez. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis tapped out top donors and burned through $7.9 million in his first 6 weeks as a presidential candidate, according to NBC News analysis of his new campaign finance disclosure. The numbers suggest for the first time that solvency could be a threat to the DeSantis campaign, which has touted its fundraising ability as a key measure of viability. They reflect the broader reality that DeSantis stalled after his campaign launch, polling ahead of the Republican primary pack, but far behind President Donald Trump. In another sign of financial strain on the campaign, DeSantis fired nearly a dozen staffers in what a source familiar with the move described as a cost-cutting measure. The irony for DeSantis is that he raised a total of $20.1 million between mid-May and the end of June, easily ahead of other Republican candidates, even Trump, whose campaign only raised $17.7 million from April to June, though Trump's campaign committee did end the quarter with twice as much money to spend as DeSantis. But more than two-thirds of DeSantis' money, nearly $14 million, came from donors who gave the legal maximum and cannot donate again. Some of those donors gave the $3,300 limit for both the primary and the general election, boosting DeSantis' totals with cash that they can't be used to try to defeat Trump. DeSantis finished June with more than $12.2 million in the bank, but his filings indicate that $3 million of that can only be used in the general election. Trump's campaign ended the quarter with $22.5 million cash on hand. And folks, as if that weren't bad enough, I mentioned at the beginning that he's got problems all around. Well, as far as money is concerned, here's an even bigger problem. Here's a report from ABC News. Headline: DeSantis weighs media strategy shift as donors fret about early campaign struggles. I want to go deep into the heart of this and read you one paragraph which ought to be frightening. Hedge fund billionaire Ken Griffin, who early on had signaled plans to throw his support behind DeSantis' White House run, has in particular grown increasingly frustrated with how the Florida governor's early campaign has played out after hoping the governor would be the best bet to take on Trump in the primary, sources familiar with Griffith's thinking told ABC News. Griffith has privately told people close to him, including other top donors, he's growing impatient with waiting for DeSantis to show progress as a candidate, said a source familiar with Griffin's thinking. A source described Griffin as having, quote, hit the pause button on his support. And as if that weren't bad enough, here's one more for you. This is from Breitbart. Headline: Murdochs lose confidence in Ron DeSantis' ability to defeat Donald Trump. Article written by Jordan Dixon Hamilton. Media tycoon Rupert Murdoch, who has bolstered Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' national profile through Fox News and other outlets he and his family own, is reportedly losing confidence in DeSantis' ability to defeat former President Donald Trump in the 2024 Republican primary. Rolling Stone magazine reported. One Fox News insider told Rolling Stone that Rupert and his son Lachlan Murdoch, quote, are transactional and can smell a loser a mile away. Okay, folks. That's enough bad news, I think, ain't make anybody want to pull out the handkerchief and cry. And if you're Ron DeSantis, you better get a real big one, because taking on that kind of news ain't good for your blood pressure, your system, or your ability to sleep at night. So I think it's time to have a pretty frank discussion here. Now, let me set this up. The comments that I'm about to make are not directed toward people who are supporting Ron DeSantis, voters in particular, or even friends of mine in social media who are supporting Ron DeSantis. You know what? I may not agree with you, but it's your right and it's your decision. And you know what? I still love you, even though I don't think it's the right move. But you know what? That's your choice as an American voter in this election. I can totally understand that. And you know what? If it were to come down to Biden versus DeSantis, I'll vote for DeSantis, even though, I'm leaning toward Trump, to be perfectly honest with you, for various reasons. But this commentary that I'm about to give going forward is not directed at people who are supporting Ron DeSantis, voters who are supporting Ron DeSantis. It's more or less directed to Ron DeSantis and his wife, Casey. It's most certainly not directed to his campaign staff or the paid political consultants. These are a bunch of leech-sucking whores that frankly are doing nothing more than bleeding Ron DeSantis for millions of dollars in campaign payments. They're going to ruin his campaign, ruin everything, take their money, and walk away. Okay? So they're not going to listen to me anyway. They're in this for the money. This is directed more toward Governor DeSantis and his wife. Okay, you've been at this now a few months. I can respect that. You're in the early stages of this thing. I can respect that too. But it's not as early as you think and the clock's ticking very quickly. As of yesterday, July 15th, you are 6 months away from the first caucuses in Iowa, January 15th, 2024. You're bleeding money. You can't raise money. You've maxed out a significant number of donors. And by maxed out, there are FEC rules about how much a person can give for the primary and the general election. Okay? So you've maxed out a whole bunch of donors. You're bleeding big name donors like Ken Griffin. He's putting the pause button on. The Murdochs over at Fox News are starting to smell the tag of loser on you. They don't want to be around you anymore. There's really not a place safe you can go. Now, I know what people are going to say to me. Oh, come on, Front Porch. You're being harsh about this. It's early in the campaign. People aren't focused on it yet. Yeah, but therein lies some big problems. Numbers don't lie, ladies and gentlemen. Take a look at this. This is from Real Clear Politics. This is a running average with the most updated polls, by the way, of the state of the race for the Republican nomination in 2024. Notice that big old number right there? Normally I would say don't take an average of RCP polls because frankly some of the polls aren't good, but they do show a trend, and the trend is this. Donald Trump is dominating this primary. It doesn't matter what indictments get thrown at the man. It doesn't matter what piece of bad news. It doesn't matter anything else. His support among Republicans and the Republican base is rock solid, to the point he's got an average of a 32-point lead. Now, some people are going to say, well, okay, that's the national. But when you start getting into places like Iowa and you start getting into New Hampshire and you start getting into South Carolina, all that's going to change. DeSantis, he's going to pick up steam. Okay, all right. Let's take that argument. Let's start looking at the numbers, all right? Let's go first to Iowa. Again, Real Clear Politics average of polls. Trump's got a 24-point lead in Iowa. If you take all the polls, average them together, run the numbers, ring it all out, he's got a 24-point lead. And if you don't believe those numbers, try this on for size. This is a poll that was just released on Friday from Rich Barris of Big Data Poll. He specifically polled the state of Iowa. The results? Trump's got 51% to Ron DeSantis' 19%. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a 32-point lead. And of those people who responded to the poll, about 75% of them said they could not be persuaded to change their mind. So if they're saying Trump, they're staying with Trump. The amount of people that might change their mind, who are indicating in this poll they could go to Trump, but maybe might go somewhere else, is infinitesimally small. I'll say it again. Trump is holding a 32-point lead on Ron DeSantis. That's the state of Iowa. So what's it like everywhere else? Well, let's just go around the board. Let's go up to New Hampshire. Again, Real Clear Politics average of polls. Trump's got a 24-point lead on DeSantis. DeSantis has got 18.7. If you average everything together, Trump's got 42.7. And worse than that, there's a new poll that just came out in New Hampshire. Trump maintains 37-point lead over Ron DeSantis. This is from Breitbart. Poll was done by, let me find it here real fast. Yeah, American Pulse. Poll was ran July 5th through July 11th. And just to make my point, let's go to South Carolina. South Carolina, Trump's got a 20-point lead if you average the polls together. I said a minute ago, these comments are going to be directed toward Governor DeSantis and his wife, Casey. And it goes something like this. Governor, I respect you tremendously. I think you've done a great job in the state of Florida, and I mean that in all sincerity. You're letting your ambition override your common sense. Now, you're probably going to retort to me, I've got time, I can raise the money, I can turn this thing around. No, you can't. You're going to lose. You're going to lose badly. You need to get out of this race. Now, you're probably also sitting there thinking, why should I take advice from a guy who's wearing a hat talking on the internet? Because unlike some people surrounding your campaign, I'm going to tell you the truth. Look at who you're up against. Look at his support inside the Republican Party. Look at the fundraising. Look at the people who are already backing off of you 6 months away from the Iowa caucuses. Governor, run the numbers. There's nowhere for you to go. And I respect you tremendously. I think you've done a great job in Florida. I think you will finish your second term and be a tremendous governor for the state of Florida. Get out of this race because you're running the risk. The longer you stay in this thing, you're going to become just like Ted Cruz and like Mike Pence. Cruz at least has more respect among Republican voters than does Mike Pence. Mike Pence right now couldn't be elected dog catcher in the Republican Party because of the way he treated Trump toward the end and in some parts of the Trump presidency. At least Cruz has got a shot at salvaging a national reputation. I don't think he'll ever be president, but he'll be better treated by the base of the Republican Party. But you're going to wind up being one of those two men, probably like Pence. You'll suffer his fate. Get out of this race. The longer you stay in, the more you're going to run the risk with the base of the Republican Party that they will hate you for what you're doing. And I'll say it again. You are letting your ambition, and Mrs. DeSantis, same message to you. You're letting your ambition, the two of you are letting your ambition override your common sense. Common sense ought to tell you that you might be the little engine that could. You're going up against a Trump train. Cross in front of him and he'll run you over on the tracks, proverbially speaking. Get out of this race. It is not worth committing political suicide. You can live to fight another day politically. But do yourself a favor. If you have any hope of going on to higher office in the years ahead, you've got to get out of this race and you've got to do it soon. Because you might be able to raise money, but you're not going to shake Donald Trump's supporters off of Donald Trump. The numbers are everywhere. It doesn't matter what state you poll. He's beating you by 20 to 30 points in every state. And if you're thinking you can get this thing down to Florida and win, he's got a 20-point lead on you in your own state. I'm begging you, Governor, get out of this race. Do yourself a favor. Go back to Florida, govern for your second term, do right by the people of Florida, and secure your legacy. Because you're not going to do it in this race. You will go down in flames, and your name will live in political infamy. But that's what I think about it. What do you think? As we start to wrap up this video, please do me some favors as always. Number one, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. Number two, please leave a comment below. You wouldn't believe how much that helps a little content creator like me. Number three, share the video around. Number four, give me a thumbs up. And number five, anytime you can spread the word about my channel, please do so. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.